party leaders and independent senators.
Thank you, Senator Farrell. We'll move to question time. Senator Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Farrell. Minister, prior to the election, the Prime Minister Albanese said this. He said, "If I ever do make a mistake, I'll put my hand up. I'll own it. I'll take responsibility and I'll set about fixing it." Mr Albanese, without question, promised that Australian power bills will be coming down. The Labor Party promised, not just once, but 97 times before the election, that Australians were going to see a reduction of $275 in their power bills. Minister, why won't Mr Albanese own up to his mistake, take responsibility for the broken promise and set about fixing it by delivering to Australians the $275 reduction they were promised they would receive?
Thank you, Senator Reynolds. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank Senator Reynolds for her question. Look, I think we've discovered in Prime Minister Albanese one of Australia's great Prime Ministers. I'm smiling. I'm smiling, Senator Henderson. I'm smiling, Senator Henderson, because I'm so happy. I'm so happy, not just for. No, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that Australia has finally got a really decent Prime Minister. Somebody who really genuinely understands the issues facing Australian consumers, and of course, higher electricity prices is one of them. And what was one of the first things that the new Prime Minister did on taking office? He inherited this mess. He inherited this 10 years of neglect. He inherited 10 years of neglect on the part of the former government. And what did he seek to do? Well, he sought to put downward pressure on electricity prices. He saw as quickly as he could. He saw as quickly as he could what your 10 years of neglect had done to electricity prices. And so, what did he do? He introduced a cap. He introduced a cap on gas prices and coal prices to push that pressure down. Now, he can't fix every single problem that you've created.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator Reynolds, first supplementary.
Thank you very much, President. I'm sure we're all very happy that you're happy, but I don't think the Australians are very happy at the broken promises. So my supplementary question is this. The Prime Minister also promised the Australian people on the 2nd of May 2022 that the Labor Party had no intention to make any changes to superannuation, but we now know that 1 in 10 Australians will be affected by the change they announced. Minister, when will you announce that the government has broken its promise in relation to superannuation?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you. Thank you, President, and thank Senator Reynolds for her supplementary question. It doesn't appear to have been a supplementary question about electricity. No, I'm simply saying I don't. Let me finish. I mean, you've missed me. You missed me all of last week. Here I am, here to answer your questions, and you won't let me answer those questions. Now, I'm sorry. Am I
Order
sitting down?
on
Okay.
my left and my right. Minister Farrell, please continue.
Thank you for that protection, President. We've made very clear what our position on superannuation is. The figure that you mentioned, Senator Reynolds, is a figure way into the future. The reality is that the only people The only
Thank
people.
you, Minister. Your time for answering has expired. Senator Reynolds, second supplementary.
Well, 2 out of 2 questions not answered on broken promises, and no wonder. My second supplementary question to the minister is that the Prime Minister also promised to lower the cost of PBS medicines. But guess what? Another broken promise. But the government has removed, for example, life-changing drugs from the PBS, one of which is now being relied on by 15,000 Australians who suffer from type 1 diabetes. Now, despite the minister doing an embarrassing backflip on Friday, now listing it until October,
Thank you,
what
Senator
a shame.
Reynolds. Your time has expired. Minister Farrell.
Well done. Great job.
Order. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Reynolds, for your question. Well, I'm also a diabetic, and I very much appreciate the way in which the PBS assists me with my particular products that I am required to use.
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Reynolds.
Thank you. A question of relevance. This was about what the minister was going to do for yet another broken promise on the PBS,
thank you, Senator Reynolds.
and it's not about his own personal medical situation.
Senator Reynolds, there was so much preamble to that question that your supplementary that there wasn't actually a question; it was a statement. And believe that is this a secondary point of order?
While yes, it is a sad story of a broken promise,
Senator
it was
Reynolds,
not about
what is
Senator
the point
Farrell's
of order?
health.
Thank you, Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And the particular drug I think you mentioned, is it Fiasp? Yeah, okay. It's a fast-acting insulin drug for diabetes. Minister Butler's office was made aware on the 22nd of February 2023 of Novo Nordisk's intention to... Please, you've asked a question. I'm directly answering the question, and then you're talking the whole way through the
Minister.
answer.
The time for
and I
answering
don't get a
has
chance
expired.
to answer the...
Senator Ciccone. Senator Ciccone, I've called you.
Thank you very much, President. Sorry for all that ruckus. I didn't actually hear you calling me, but thank you very much. But given that Senator Farrell's doing a fine job, my question is also to Senator Farrell, as the acting leader of the government here in the Senate and representing the Foreign Affairs Minister. Senator Farrell, how will the AUKUS submarine acquisition make Australia and our region a much safer and stronger part in this part of the world?
Senator Farrell. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Ciccone for his question. I know he has a deep interest in Australian security matters. The AUKUS optimal pathway announced last week is an unprecedented investment in our national power. The acquisition of nuclear-powered submarines will be the single greatest defence capability acquisition in our history. I'll repeat that. It's the single greatest defence investment in our history. Our nuclear-powered submarines will be an Australian sovereign capable, commanded by the Royal Australian Navy and sustained by Australian shipyards. Senators have heard members of the government speak of how our region is at the centre of a world that is being reshaped, of how we face our most challenging circumstances since the Second World War. AUKUS is one element of Australia's approach to addressing this strategic environment and contributing to strategic balance in our region. I hope senators would agree that Australia has a responsibility to contribute to a regional balance in capability that helps underpin regional stability. We want to ensure that no state will ever conclude the benefits of conflict outweigh the risks. And so, nuclear-powered submarines are part of our contribution to this aim by transforming our ability to deter or respond to any future threats. As part of our contribution to the regional balance, these submarines add to a collective security in a region where no country dominates and no country is dominated.
Thank you, Senator Farrell. Senator Ciccone, first supplementary.
Thank you very much, President. And with my first supplementary, I do ask Senator Farrell, how will the AUKUS submarine acquisition contribute to the Australian economy?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and once again thank Senator Ciccone for his question.
Order.
The scale, partnership.
Order.
The scale, partnership.
Order.
The scale, partnership and commitment of this deal are unmatched. Governments, businesses and communities in all three countries are invested in this being a success for generations to come. AUKUS will create around 20,000 direct jobs over the next 30 years. My state, in particular South Australia, will be the home of the Australian nuclear-powered submarine construction. Labor has always stood up for South Australian shipbuilders, and now we're delivering with an historic investment. Up to 4,000 workers will design and build the infrastructure for the submarine construction yard at Osborne. A further 4,000 to 5,500 direct jobs are expected to build nuclear-powered submarines in South Australia when the program reaches its peak.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Ciccone, second supplementary.
Thank you very much, President, and thank you, Minister, for that answer. Minister, how will Australia maintain its world-class non-proliferation credentials under the AUKUS submarine acquisition?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam President, and once again thank Senator Ciccone for his question. Labor has a proud history of non-proliferation and disarmament advocacy, and we are resolutely committed to the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. We are working openly and transparently with the International Atomic Energy Agency to develop a robust non-proliferation approach to underpin our program. And let me be clear, Australia will never seek to acquire nuclear weapons. Our AUKUS partners recognise Australia's obligations under international law, including the Treaty of Rarotonga, and naval nuclear propulsion is consistent with those obligations. Finally, I note that the United States Defence Secretary Austin has confirmed submarines visiting Australia on rotation will be conventionally armed.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Farrell. Is Mike Hurst, former CEO of Bendigo Bank, correct when he said recently that taxing unrealised gains is going to provide cash flow problems for people who might not be earning a lot of income but have assets? Can you guarantee that no farmer will have to sell any part of their farm to pay their superannuation tax bill?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Colbeck, for his question. And I didn't get the opportunity in the previous question to sort of point out just how small the impact of our super changes is going to be, and I think it's worth repeating that 99.5% of superannuation recipients are not going to be the subject of this change. But in terms of the issue that you've just raised, in terms of unrealised gains, the simplest and least cost approach is to apply the tax on the growth of an individual's balance over the year. This approach, recommended by Treasury, included assessing unrealised capital gains. This approach strikes, we believe, the right balance between simplicity and ensuring that the tax can be applied across the systems. Trustees already calculate the value of their fund each year and submit that to the tax office, which will enable the ATO to...
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Colbeck.
Thanks, President. On relevance, it would be nice if the Minister did at least use the word farmer because the question was about whether a farmer might have to sell part of their farm.
Thank you, Senator Colbeck. The minister is being relevant to the question. Minister Farrell, please continue.
President, well, in terms of the question of whether farmers need to liquidate the family farm in, say, a SMS fund to pay the tax liability, under our superannuation law, funds should have some liquid assets to meet any additional tax liabilities and to meet their running costs. This is no different. There are a range of well, I do have some idea about how to run a small business, Senator McGrath. I do have some practical experience in that matter.
Order.
Yeah.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Colbeck, first supplementary.
Katie's got some more homework.
Thank you, President. Under Labor's new super tax, if a farmer with a self-managed super fund sees the paper value, if a farmer with a self-managed super fund sees the paper value of her farm's self-managed super fund fluctuate above and below the $3 million threshold across a number of years, will those gains be subject to the 30% tax rate each time?
Thank you, Senator Farrell. Minister Farrell. Thank you, Senator Colbeck. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Well, in terms of answering that question and the previous question, of course, there are a range of cash flow requirements within an SMF, not just tax liabilities, which trustees are required to consider. This includes examples, accounting and administration costs, investment fees and costs associated with maintaining real assets such as property. Now, I think in terms of putting your question into some perspective, Senator Colbeck, I think it's worth pointing out that only 0.2% of SMSFs have 100% of their assets.
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, President. A question on point of order, I should say, on direct relevance. The question asked by Senator Colbeck in this case went particularly to the impact of thresholds and those funds operating at or close to the threshold, potentially moving up and down, above and below that threshold. Senator Farrell has had 49 seconds. He's only got 11 seconds left. He hasn't come close to the issue of the threshold.
Senator Birmingham, the question was about self-managed funds, but I will remind Senator Farrell of the entirety of the question. Minister.
Thank you, President. Well, look, I was trying to put the issue in some perspective, and particularly so as to not frighten those farmers.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. Your time has expired. Senator Colbeck, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. How will you ensure that farmers, small business owners and other self-funded retirees are not subject to double taxation under your new super tax?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, the point I was trying to make before is that obviously the opposition think there's some political advantage in running a scare campaign.
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Ruston.
The minister has clearly used the entire time not to answer the question. Could you direct him to answering the question?
Senator Ruston, if you're calling a point of order on relevance, it is on the question before the chair, and that is the second supplementary. The minister's got to his feet. I will listen closely, and if he's not relevant, I will remind him of the question. Minister.
Thank you, President. But with due respect to Senator Ruston, just because you don't like the way in which, just because you don't like the way I answer the question, doesn't mean that what I'm saying is not relevant for the question. And on this very point, the point I'm trying to make is a simple one. There is no point trying to scare farmers or other small business people with a scare campaign that bears no relevance to the facts. It bears no relevance to the facts.
Minister Farrell, Thank you. Senator Birmingham.
Direct relevance again, President. This minister is seeking to speak constantly in generalisations when a specific question has been asked. If he's worried about putting people's minds at ease, perhaps he should be able to answer the specific questions to put their mind at ease.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Farrell, order. Minister Farrell, I will remind you of the question and the need to be relevant. Thank you.
Just on the question of double taxation, of course, one of the things to note about this new change is that it doesn't come into effect for a couple of years, and there's plenty of time to consult.
Senator Shoebridge.
Thank you, President. My question is directed to the Honourable Don Farrell in his capacity representing the Minister for Foreign Affairs and the Minister for Defence. Since becoming Foreign Minister, Senator Wong has repeatedly stated that re-engaging with China on a diplomatic level is the first step to stabilising the two countries' relationship. China last week responded to the announcement about the $368 billion nuclear-powered submarine deal, saying the US, UK and Australia are completely disregarding the concerns of the international community and, quote, walking further and further down the path of error and danger. Isn't it true that whatever efforts your government was making to repair relations with China through diplomatic means, they have now been fundamentally sabotaged by this hawkish push from defence and the US and UK arms industries?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Shoebridge for his question. Look, I don't agree with your assertion there, Senator, and I'll make a couple of points, and I made this point on Sky TV yesterday. I think Senator Wong is shaping up to be one of the finest foreign ministers that we've had in this country, certainly in my lifetime. And I think all of the things that she's done, not just in the Pacific, not just maybe provocative, but I think it's true, and most of my colleagues here would see them nodding.
Order.
She's not only what she's been doing in the Pacific, in the Asian region, but what she has been doing in terms of China. I mean, I might remind you that 2 days before Christmas, when most of us would have been spending our time with our families preparing for Christmas Day, Senator Wong flew up to China to meet again with her equivalent, and that meeting was the precursor to a meeting that I had a couple of weeks ago with my equivalent to try and stabilise and normalise the relationship with China. There's nothing that I've heard. There's nothing I've heard that would suggest anything other than this process of stabilisation is well on its way. I mean, you may read everything in the Chinese newspapers, but I hear and believe all of those things. Well, no, I don't live on a rock.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Shoebridge, first supplementary.
A senior Indonesian official says the country's sea lanes should not be used by Australian nuclear-propelled submarines because, quote, AUKUS was created for fighting. Similar concerns have been expressed by Malaysia. Given the negative response from our regional neighbours to the AUKUS submarine deal, can you now acknowledge that it marks the official demotion of Australian diplomacy and the bypassing of Senator Wong's office for an international posture driven by defence hawks and the US and UK arms industries?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. Well, I completely reject the assertion and the underlying assumptions in your question. I saw Senator Wong just about every day last week out there explaining to the Australian people what the AUKUS arrangements means for not only her own state, of course, which is a very significant development, but for the country and the region. And I would have said that, on balance, the response, for instance, of the Indonesians, which you've referred to, was a very balanced response to what was a sensible decision in our national interest.
Order.
We have to. the most important job of any federal government is to ensure the safety and the security of its people.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Shoebridge, order. Order. Senator Shoebridge, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Pete. Today marks 20 years since the invasion of Iraq. Minister, do you accept that the $368+ billion AUKUS submarine deal and its handcuffing of our largest military program ever to the United States military and their future war-making shows we've learnt nothing from the disaster of Iraq? Nothing.
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Farrell.
Look, again, I reject completely the suggested link between AUKUS and the events in Iraq. I think I'd point out that had we had a Labor government in office at the time that the decisions were made in respect to Iraq, Australia would not have joined.
Senator Farrell, could you resume your seat, please?
Sorry.
Senator Shoebridge, I've called you at least 3 times. You've asked your question. Now allow the minister to respond. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, President. My point is simply this, that there is no link between AUKUS and what happened in Iraq. And had a Labor government been in office, the Labor Party under Simon Crean,
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. And again, Senator Whish-Wilson, I've called you on numerous occasions. The question's been asked. Allow the minister to answer. Minister Farrell, please continue.
They ask the questions, President, and then they don't like the answers. But the truth of what happened under the Iraq war—
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator Marielle Smith.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister for Finance and the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, last week the Albanese government announced the details of the optimal pathway for the AUKUS Pact between Australia, the United States and the United Kingdom. Can the minister outline to the Senate how this agreement will create Australian jobs?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Smith for the question. This was a really historic announcement and a unique opportunity for jobs and skills right here in Australia. It will create an entirely new workforce sector driving skills, training and employment opportunities which will benefit the national economy for generations. It's a whole-of-nation effort that will deliver nation-changing opportunities, including around 20,000 direct high-skilled, high-paid jobs, including technicians, engineers, scientists and project managers. This means jobs right across Australia, but also in the good Senator Smith's home state of South Australia and indeed Western Australia. In South Australia, where I had the honour to visit last week with Senator Wong, this project will mean up to 4,000 workers will be employed to design and build the infrastructure at the submarine construction yard in Osborne at its peak, and a further 4,000 to 5,500 direct jobs are expected to be created to build the nuclear-powered submarines in South Australia when the program reaches its peak in 20 to 30 years, almost double the workforce that had been forecast for the Attack-class program. In Western Australia, the expansion of HMAS Stirling to support the infrastructure required for nuclear-powered submarines is expected to create around 3,000 direct jobs over the decade, and an additional 500 direct jobs are expected to be created to sustain the submarine rotational force west over the period 2027 to 2032. We need to get moving on these investments, not just for our national security, but investing in the future of defence and also the future of our economy and the skills and jobs that come with it. This is a big investment, and we've been upfront with the Australian people about the substantial pressures on the budget. Defence is one of the big 5 fastest-growing areas of spending, along with NDIS, aged care, healthcare and the costs of servicing the $1 trillion of Liberal debt.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Smith, first supplementary.
Minister, how will this agreement benefit not just Australian workers but also Australian companies?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Smith again for her advocacy, in particular in relation to the state of South Australia. Last week, when I was visiting South Australia, with ANI at Osborne. We announced the Sovereign Submarine Partnership, which will be the architecture that is used to guide and set how these submarines will be built. This agreement will provide opportunity to select the partners, but also ensure that to maximise the opportunities for Australian businesses to participate in these new arrangements. This is complementary to our plans for a future made in Australia and the Buy Australian plan, which is about leveraging the purchasing power of the Commonwealth to increase opportunities for Australian workers and businesses. We're estimating that $6 billion will be invested in Australian industry and workforce, a transformational investment which will remake Australia and accelerate growth in the same way that large projects like Snowy did all those years ago.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Smith, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, and you're welcome in South Australia any time. Can you tell us how the creation of new jobs and opportunities for Australian businesses will benefit the Australian economy?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, yes, it will transform our economy for a new era. A whole generation of workers will be trained in the latest engineering, technology and building skills. There will be significant benefits across the nation through increased economic activity and job creation, which will start immediately and grow over time as we develop a whole new industry and new supports for that industry. It's all part of our economic plan to undertake investments to build the capability of our people and expand the productive capacity of our economy for a new era. I've already mentioned the Future Made in Australia plans and the Buy Australian plan policy. We also have the National Reconstruction Fund, obviously, which would be good to pass the legislation that supports that. Policies for free feed TAFE, Jobs and Skills Australia and acting on climate change. All of these policies are designed to grow the economy, boost productivity and upskill Australians, and the AUKUS investment is another vital part of our economic plan going to the future.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson. Order.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Farrell. The updated strategic direction statement for the National Indigenous Australians Agency that falls under the portfolio of Prime Minister and Cabinet says it provides advice on whole-of-government priorities for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, as well as leading and coordinating the implementation of Australia's Closing the Gap targets in partnership with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Given we have the NIAA, why does the government contend we need a voice to Parliament in the Constitution?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Hanson for her question. I think the first and primary answer to that question is that at the last election, the Labor Party listened to those people who had advocated on behalf of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, people like my very good friend here, Patrick Dodson, like Jana Stewart over there, amongst very, very many other significant members of the Labor Party, to try and deal with the issue of Indigenous recognition through a voice to the Australian Parliament. That process wasn't developed overnight. It took place over a long period of time, and we took that proposition to the Australian people at the last election, and the Australian people made a decision about who they wanted to govern this country. And as soon as we got into government, because they elected us as the government, we undertook to implement the promise that we had taken. You talk about promises. Well, we took a promise. We took a promise to the Australian people, and we have implemented.
Order.
We have sought to implement that problem. I have to say I have been disappointed in the opposition in their approach so far to simple things like the machinery bill that could start the process of implementing.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
The NIAA priorities this year include closing the gaps, implementing the Uluru Statement, developing a new jobs program, delivering First Nations justice, whatever that means, and more. It has also budgeted $31 million to deliver local and regional voice implementation, despite the Prime Minister saying he would not fund the yes or no cases in the coming referendum. Will the Minister please inform the Senate about the NIAA's total budget for 22-23?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Hanson again for her question. I think you're conflating a couple of issues, to be honest with you, Senator Hanson. No, it's not patronising. It's simply a statement of fact. Senator Hanson has asked a question, and I'm trying to answer that question for her. That information that you are requesting will, of course, be published in due course as part of the relevant budget papers. But the issue of the referendum to implement the voice. Indigenous recognition.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
It doesn't surprise me, no answer. And you don't even know. The budget papers are already out. Actually, the NIAA is almost $4.5 billion. It employs more than 1,300 people, and its remit appears to be largely the same as the government's somewhat vague intentions for the voice. That's truth-telling for you. Will the Minister please explain why Australians should not believe the government's ulterior motive in implementing the Uluru Statement is to establish an independent, sovereign black nation in Australia?
Yeah! Order, Senator Thorpe. Senator Thorpe, order. Minister Farrell. Order.
Well, Senator Hanson, I completely reject your proposition. This is an issue that, as I said, the Labor Party took to the last election, and we are seeking to implement Indigenous recognition through a voice to Parliament, and we're seeking to do it in an open, honest and transparent way. Just to give you one example, originally there wasn't going to be a yes or a no case pamphlet, and we were requested to do that by the opposition, and we agreed. And as part of that process, Senator Hanson, because you're a member of Parliament and because of the way in which that document is going to be prepared, you yourself will have an opportunity to explain to the Australian people whether you're supporting yes or no. I think I can guess.
Minister Farrell, time for answering has expired. Thank you. Senator Rennick.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister,
Order.
Senator Farrell. AEMO explicitly named regulatory approvals, price intervention and a mandatory code of conduct as key uncertainties impacting project timelines and likelihood of completion. Minister, will you admit that the interventions of your government are suppressing and damaging investment in new gas projects?
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Rennick, for this rare question. No, the short answer is no to that. Look all around the world, Senator, as to what the consequences of this terrible war between Russia and Ukraine has done to gas prices, right around.
Order. Minister Farrell, please continue.
All around the world, governments are dealing with this issue of rising electricity prices. All around the world, governments have had to deal with the way of trying to put downward pressure on those prices. What what we have done, well,
Senator Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Order on my left and right. Order. Minister, please continue.
I mean, what are the Europeans doing? What are the Europeans doing at the moment? What are the Europeans doing? They're putting caps on gas prices. Is anybody in Europe saying, "Oh, this is going to result for disinvestment in gas"? No, they're not saying that. In fact, what they're doing is increasing their investment in this area. And of course, my belief is that that's where. Well, I'm happy to talk to you, Senator Canavan, about gas prices and the importance of investment in gas in this
Thank you, Minister.
In this country.
Time for answering has expired. Senator Rennick, first supplementary.
When will the Albanese's government mandatory code of conduct be finalised?
Minister Farrell. Order. I've called the Minister. Minister Farrell.
Thank you. Unlike the former government, who seemed to be unable to come out with any sensible plan in respect of gas prices, coal prices, electricity prices, climate change, this government has got a plan, and we are working through that plan as we speak. We're working through that plan as we speak, and we've got a number of excellent ministers, like Minister.
Minister Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Rennick.
Point of order, Chair. I asked when the mandatory code of conduct will be completed, not when you are working through it.
Thank you, Senator Rennick. I will direct the minister to the questions. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, Madam President. And look, we're dealing with the issue. We're putting downward pressure on the electricity system, and we are consulting as we should.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. The time for answering has expired. Senator Rennick, second supplementary.
Labor has broken its promise to lower power bills by $275. Given the simple economic fact that price controls do not increase supply, what do you have to say to Australians who may also lose power and heating this year because of Labor's failed energy policies? Is the government lowering bills by simply not having any power or gas to buy?
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank the senator for his supplementary question. This government has made it very clear that we continue to support the gas industry in this country. Well, they may not say that to you, Senator, but they say that to me, and I have regular discussions with many of the major gas companies in this country. And look, they understand the pressure. They understand the pressure that Australian consumers and Australian businesses are under as a result of your failure
on my left.
to.
Senator Cash.
They understand the pressure
Minister
that they're
Farrell, please
under.
resume your seat. Minister Farrell, please resume. Order on my left. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. Is that the question you would have chosen, Gerard?
Look. These issues,
Minister, the time for
are
answering
being
has
dealt
expired.
with.
Thank you. Senator McKim.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, you and other members of your government consistently say that it is the financial position you inherited which is the reason you can't provide more support for Australians getting smashed by the cost of living crisis. Yet last week your government delighted US and British weapons manufacturers by signing up to a $368 billion deal for nuclear-powered submarines. Minister, how are you ever going to look Australians in the eye again and tell them that you can't afford to put dental and mental health into Medicare, that you can't afford to raise the rate of income support and that you can't afford to wipe student debt when you are prepared to splash $368 billion on the AUKUS subs?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator McKim for the question. And as senators will know, one of the main job of a federal government is to keep our citizens safe. And this investment in our national security is important on its own, but it also has significant economic benefits across the country as well. In terms of the impact, the question goes to the impact on the budget. So, as people will be aware, we've forecast that over the forward estimates the impact will be in the order of $9 billion, of which $6 billion sits in the forward estimates as provision for the attack class, and that the additional costs over the forward estimates will be met from within Defence's existing funding arrangements. Over the medium term, we are looking at costs in the order of $50 to $58 billion, and beyond that, looking at around 0.15% of GDP, 0.15% of GDP over into the next 20, 30 years. I would say that this investment is also just under 10% of the investment that we make overall into defence. It is an important arrangement and an important agreement, but I would also say that that doesn't mean that those other areas of priority within the budget don't get the attention of the government as well. And as you know, we've made investments into key social policy areas like childcare, like making medicines cheaper, like investing in free fee TAFE, and the budget will also have a significant investment in cost of living around energy bills. We've also got the work that's coming our way from the Economic Inclusion Advisory Board that will also inform the government in its decision-making. But it's not an either-or. We have to do all of these things.
Thank you, Minister. Were you going to make a point of order, Senator McKim, or are you standing?
Oh, no, I wasn't. I was simply rising slightly precipitously.
Okay. Right, so first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, Labor's Stage 3 tax cuts will cost even more than Labor's nuclear submarines. 3/4 of the benefit of the Stage 3 tax cuts will go to the top 20% of income earners. Meanwhile, women in their 60s are having to sleep on their friends' couches. Is this what the Prime Minister meant when he said that Labor would leave no one behind?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator McKim for his ongoing interest in Stage 3 tax cuts. As the senator will know, our policy on these tax cuts hasn't changed, and our focus on tax reform is in the area of ensuring multinationals pay their fair share of tax, and some of the change that we've recently announced around superannuation for high balance accounts. I would say again, we have important policies that go to the point. I'm not dismissing the point that Senator McKim raises about other areas of pressing pressure and need in the budget, including for women and women's housing. It is a real priority, and that's why we really like to see this Senate pass the Housing Australia Future Fund in this fortnight, so that we could make sure that some of the allocations to that go absolutely and specifically to that demographic group.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McKim, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, we hear a lot from the Treasurer about relief, repair and restraint, but the Stage 3 tax cuts and the submarines are none of those things. Given your cash splash on weapons and the wealthy and your avoidance of serious tax reform, what excuse will you use when you hand down your austerity budget in May?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator McKim for his question, and Senator McKim can describe a budget that hasn't been handed down or finalised in in the terms with which he chooses. But this budget is an important budget in terms of the relief that we need to offer for cost of living. I've gone through the forward estimates impact of the defence arrangements of AUKUS to make sure that that isn't an additional cost that's being met from within the forward estimates. In this high inflation environment, there is also a responsibility to not be adding to or fuelling inflation. So that means the decisions we take have to be very careful. They have to be about investing in the productive side of our economy, not making the inflation challenge harder, but making sure that we are providing sensible and affordable cost of living relief where we can, and we think we will get those. There's still a lot of decisions to be made, but the budget will be determined in that light.
Thank you, Minister. Senator White.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Skills and Training, Senator Watt. Can the Minister update the Senate on how the Albanese Labor government's AUKUS submarine program Skills and Training Academy will help to upskill and attract the workforce to support and build the capabilities of Australia's world-leading defence industry?
Thank you, Senator White. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator White, who I know has had a lifelong interest and dedication to raising skills and training within our community. Last week, the Prime Minister announced Australia's optimal pathway to acquire conventionally armed, nuclear-powered submarines. In addition to strengthening Australia's national security, this announcement will build a future made in Australia by Australians with record investments in defence, skills, jobs and infrastructure. As Senator Gallagher has stated, the program will create around 20,000 direct jobs over the next 30 years across industry, the Australian Defence Force and the Australian Public Service, including trades workers, operators, technicians, engineers, scientists, submariners and project managers. And at its peak, building and sustaining nuclear-powered submarines in Australia will create up to 8,500 direct jobs in the industrial workforce. It's a decision that means many, many jobs for workers right around the country, in particular in the states of South and West Australia. And on Wednesday, the Commonwealth and South Australian governments signed a cooperation agreement outlining our respective governments' commitment to supporting the construction of Australia's next-generation conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarines in Adelaide. As part of the agreement, the Albanese government and South Australia will work towards the construction, establishment and operation of a skills and training academy campus in South Australia. The academy will be a dedicated hub to attract, grow, develop and qualify the shipbuilding workforce to meet current and future demands and provide opportunities for continuous development of the existing workforce. The academy will support the entire shipbuilding workforce, providing hands-on trades training and classroom-based professional development backed by cutting-edge technology and modern facilities. This will be a whole-of-nation initiative and it will incorporate multiple locations to deliver training where it's needed, with the central campus being built in South Australia.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Senator White, first supplementary.
Can the Minister explain how the new academy will work hand-in-glove with education and training providers and state and territory governments to drive Australia's workforce and skills development?
Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator White. The new Skills and Training Academy will be delivered working in lockstep with state and territory governments, unions, universities, education and training providers and the scientific and technical sectors, and will be vital to supporting the capabilities of Australia's world-leading defence industry. Importantly, the academy will be responsive, connected to and informed by Australian industry. This will be an academy that strengthens Australia's sovereign capabilities by growing our industrial workforce, ensuring that industry has the people and skills it needs to realise emerging opportunities across the shipbuilding economy. The Albanese Labor government has a strong record of working hand-in-glove with state and territory governments when it comes to skills development. In addition to the announcement of the new academy, the Albanese Labor government has also signed landmark skills agreements with every state and territory government, and that, of course, includes the delivery of 180,000 fee-free TAFE and VET places nationwide in 2023, along with a range of other initiatives.
Thank you, Minister. Senator White, second supplementary.
What steps has the Albanese Labor government already taken to help upskill Australians to harness these jobs and opportunities of the future?
Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Well, the Albanese Labor government understands the life-changing benefits of vocational education and training to create good, secure jobs and to address skill shortages. Unlike we saw from the former government cutting TAFE, cutting training opportunities until it was all too late, the Albanese Labor government is serious about building the skills of our workforce so that the people have the opportunity to take on the jobs of the future. Australia's vocational education and training sector already contributes significantly to our naval, shipbuilding and sustainment sector, providing diverse skills requirements ranging from complex engineering and design roles, project management and logistics roles, through to highly advanced technician and trade roles. And our delivery of 180,000 fee-free TAFE and VET places in 2023 is further supporting this. The Albanese Labor government is investing in our greatest resource, our people. Our fee-free TAFE places will provide training opportunities, particularly focusing on priority groups, increase workforce participation and address skills gaps in the economy.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Davey.
Thank you very much. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry and Minister for Emergency Management, Senator Murray Watt. Minister, what assets does the Commonwealth have which could be used to help remove dead fish from the Darling River at Menindee? Has the Commonwealth offered any of these resources to help the New South Wales authorities in the clean-up of these dead fish along the Darling River?
Thank you, Senator Davey. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Davey, for the question. As Senator Davey is well aware, the Commonwealth is always open to the option of deploying Defence Force personnel to assist in any natural disaster if requested by the state government. Now, I am not aware of any request having been made by the New South Wales government for that form of assistance. I'm happy to be corrected if such a request has been made. But of course, the other point to make is that the Menindee Lakes fish deaths, while absolutely tragic, and I think all of us have been very disturbed by the footage there, they do not constitute a natural disaster. So I'm not sure whether there is even the capacity to deploy the Defence Forces, even if such a request were to occur. If Senator Davey is aware of a request having been made by the Defence Force, I'm certainly happy to be made aware of that, but I'm certainly not aware of any request having been made. Of course, it's not uncommon for the opposition to call for the deployment of the Defence Forces despite and other federal assistance when not requested by state governments. We saw Senator McDonald do that in a radio interview last week in relation to the floods in north-west Queensland, only a matter of hours after I informed her that no such request had been made by the Queensland government, but never let things get in the way of making a political point when that can be made. As I say, I think we are all concerned by the large-scale fish kills that are being captured on footage at the moment at Menindee Lakes, and this, of course, is the second time in 4 years that we've seen this occur. It seems, while this is all being investigated, that it's mostly caused by black water and the low oxygen that results from that. As the fish kills have been caused by flooding combined with high temperatures, which is what causes that low oxygen that flows from black water.
Thank you, Minister Watt. The time for answering has expired. Senator Davey, wait until you're called. Senator Davey.
Thank you. My question, however, Minister, was not necessarily specific to the Defence Force, and the Minister would well be aware that 6 years and $15 million—
Senator Davey, what is the point of order?
I wasn't. I'm standing to ask my supplementary question.
Okay, sorry.
So,
Senator Davey, please resume your seat. Senator McGrath, that was entirely unnecessary, and I am not. Senator McGrath, resume your seat. You are out of order. Senator McGrath, you are out of order. Minister Farrell.
McGrath deserves a withdrawal and an apology.
Absolutely. She's the president.
Senator McGrath, resume your seat. You are being disrespectful and disorderly. Senator Farrell has asked you to apologise and withdraw. I'm going to ask you to reflect on that and consider that. I apologise and I withdraw. Thank you, Senator McGrath. Senator Davey, I'm going to ask you to start the question again, and I will apologise because you stood just before the minister had finished, and I thought you were seeking a point of order. So please start again.
Thank you. As the minister is well aware, after 6 years and $15 million spent researching ways to deal with and remove large volumes of dead carp from our waterways under the National Carp Control Plan, what are some of the ways that the National Carp Control Plan proposes for large volume dead fish clean-up that could be offered to New South Wales to assist in the current crisis?
Thank you, Senator Davey. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Davey. And as I say, I'm not aware of any such request having been made by the New South Wales government to the federal government, but I am aware that our government is working closely with New South Wales authorities in relation to these fish deaths. I also understand that an emergency operations centre has been activated at Menindee to coordinate multi-agency operations. The centre will ensure fresh and clean water supply is maintained to the Menindee township, as well as to coordinate the removal and disposal of fish. Of course, the tragic events that we do see unfolding at Menindee are yet more proof of the need to fully deliver the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, something that the former government was unable to do in all the years. And I know it sets off the gnats. I know it sets off the gnats, and it's setting them off again. But after a decade of delay and sabotage by Liberals and Nationals around the country, there is still a way to go to finish the plan. We haven't yet received the full benefits for the river system, and unfortunately this is more proof.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Davey, second supplementary.
Incredible that you want to flood a flood. But will the Commonwealth be deploying any of the ideas developed under the National Carp Control Program to remove rotting dead fish from the Darling to assist New South Wales in this crisis? That was a program done across jurisdictions, 3,800 pages of documents as a result, with options for fish clean-up. Have you even looked at it, Minister?
Thank you, Senator Davey. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Well, Senator Davey, not only have I looked at the National Carp Control Plan, but I've in particular looked at the fact that it was first announced by the then Minister, Mr Joyce, back in May 2016. It was supposed to be delivered in 2018, and 4 years later, after the coalition lost office, it still hadn't been delivered. So, again, I don't remember this level of outrage around your own government having failed to deliver the National Carp Control Plan that it said would be delivered in 2018.
Order.
The carp plan is complete, although the report that has been received by the government more recently provides insights into the feasibility of the carp virus as a biocontrol agent, but there are uncertainties about its efficiency and effectiveness in safely removing carp from our waterways. And I am surprised that the National Party, being environmental vandals that they are, want to get out there and immediately release a virus into the Murray-Darling River.
Resume your seat. Senator Watt. Senator Davey.
I can make a point of order, thank you, Senator Ayres. I can make a point of order that he
Senator
has
Davey.
just poorly reflected on every member of the National Party.
Order. 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 I remind senators, when you seek a point of order, you stand and wait for the call, and if there are interjections from the other side, I will deal with them. Senator Davey, please continue.
A point of order, thank you, Chair. Point of order is that the minister has reflected poorly on every senator in here who is a member of the National Party, calling us environmental vandals. I ask him to withdraw.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Davey. In the spirit of keeping the chamber decent and respectful, I will ask Senator Watt to withdraw that comment and to continue his remarks.
I withdraw, but I am surprised that the National Party wants to just get out there and release the carp virus into the Murray-Darling plan when there are serious concerns about the effects that it would have.
Thank you, Minister. Your time for answering has expired. Minister.
Thank you, President. I request that further questions be placed on the notice paper.
Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. In question time on the 9th of March, I took elements of a question asked by Senator Shoebridge to me on notice. I've written to Senator Shoebridge to provide a complete answer, and I now table that answer for the information of the Senate.
Thank you.